call and know that you're there. And we're very pleased today to welcome back Attila. Attila has the greatest wealth of topics that he can talk about. You know, he's been a long time member of HMAA. You must be one of our longest serving, Attila, if we can put it that way. He's always off on another angle of the plants that he loves. So today it's dracaenas, which is really, I'm looking very much forward to this one. So we're starting off well, with the dragon blood tree, which takes me back to that one that's in the Sydney Botanic Gardens that fell over. But my kids used to love
Mm.
to climb on it when it was small, when they were small, and I hope they weren't the reason that it fell over. But I know it's sort of still there, but lying on its side ever since. Okay, but over to you, Attila, and thank you so much for doing this for us.
Judy, thank you. All right. Well, here goes. Now, before we go too far forward into the topic, I'm going to go backwards in that to give you an idea of the narrative, I'm going to look at something first, my favorite agave at the moment. It so happens I've always had a fascination for an agave called shoyi. And this is what it looks like in the botanic gardens. And in particular, I've grown it for many, many years, and I've learnt a very important lesson. Having been troubled by how horrible it looks every time I grow it, I finally found out why. I visited it in habitat, and these are some examples of the same species in habitat and the genetic variation within the species. And the character and the traits that you're looking at there are all genetic traits and variation within the species. So it's all the one species, but no teeth, joint teeth. Variegated. Oh, and that's not a mutation, that's just a one-off. It's actually a localized form of the species. The reason I'm showing you these pictures of agave shoyi, this is in the botanic gardens, and this is how it grows in American botanical gardens in the USA. And if you were to buy seed or grow it from seed, you're likely to have a plant that comes up looking like this rather than those I showed you in habitat. Why? Well, I never again will buy seed of agave shoyi off anybody unless it has provenance data or some information about its actual parent the seed came from. Now, Kelly Griffin taught me the lesson. He took me into habitat, showed me agave shoyi, and the same story really applies to Dracaena draco because I'll start by using the three words dragon blood tree. Now, historically, in Australia and overseas, many people who know and grow these types of plants often refer to them as the dragon blood tree or the dragon tree. Well, they've got a lot wrong. Why? Because a little bit of information that seems to apply to these plants really has been passed down from person to person over and over, and they haven't checked the facts. Well, I'll ask now, will the real dragon blood tree please stand up? Its name is Dracaena cinnabari. And if you notice the word cinnabar in there, cinnabar means red. Now, thank you for Wikipedia, but it reads here the name Draco on the left-hand side. Do you see the word Draco? It was renamed Dracaena cinnabari in or I think around 1880 or something. So it's quite interesting. Now, there's about 60 to 100 Dracaena species, including all of our, what is it, not Sansevierias, yes, it's we've actually, the genus Dracaena has expanded a lot to encompass a lot of plants that we often thought to be totally unrelated. But anyway, what's more important is Dracaena cinnabari has an associated species called Dracaena draco and another species called Dracaena tamarinae. Now, all three of these look the same, they grow the same. For simplistic, for conservation, sorry, in any sort of conversation, these plants are all called dragon trees or dragon, but they're not, there's differences that are quite significant. Now, the Dracaena draco is primarily from the Canary Islands, and it's called, again, thank you, Wikipedia. You notice on the top it's got the Canary Island dragon tree exhibits several forms and regional varieties, with some cultivated for ornamental use. Well, it's interesting. The natural varieties and forms include one from the island, Gran Canaria, one from the island, La Palma, down there in the middle. And there's also number 3, typical Dracaena. What is typical Dracaena draco down the bottom there? So I'm not trying to confuse you, but there's genetic variation. There are differences, and each island of the Canary Islands has a different Dracaena. And there's also near the country of Yemen, there's an island called Socotra. And only on the island of Socotra, you'll find Dracaena cinnabari. So it's an island group of Dracaenas, and they're very, very specific. This looks like Dracaena draco to me. This also looks like Dracaena draco, but I'm told they're not. This was on eBay selling as Dracaena draco. When it flowered, its flowers were yucca flowers, so it's definitely not a Dracaena. This is, hello Petra, it's a friend of mine in the USA, and these 2 plants on either side of her are Dracaena cinnabari. They're both genetic different examples of the species. This one has much greener leaves that are shorter, longer, bluer leaves. Both of these plants originated from the island of Socotra. And the leaf is much thicker than cinnabari. And you notice here where my arrow's pointing, the blue-grey colour, the blue's able to be rubbed off, or it sheds eventually. So as the plant matures, it changes. But the leaves are really thick and quite different to just typical Dracaena draco. So you look closer, you can see there is something of a more robust, thicker leaf, and it's quite different. This is Dracaena cinnabari in a botanical park, a garden, and you can see the trunk is massive. So it's not a insignificant little trunk there by comparison. Now, this is, hello, Michelle, in our garden at home, and this is Dracaena draco. This is what most of us grow. And the Dracaena draco is not the dragon's blood tree, by the way. If you carve the stem or the trunk, the sap that exudes is not the blood red of the cinnabar. Dracaena draco, the proper dragon's blood tree. So this is a distinctly different species from a different place. It originates from a different, why are we getting them so confused? Anyway, this is in our garden. Now, this is in the Botanic Garden in Melbourne, and it's a beautiful mature specimen, obviously on the right-hand side. And I'm going to do something here. Now, this is an example that has the mature plant on the left-hand side. It's got small stems and small leaves. And below it, there are green ones. They're seedlings of the same plant. And even on the ground, right at the base here, these little tiny green things, these are all seedlings that have germinated beneath the parent plant. Now, these ones in the shade are green and growing slow, but to the far right, beautiful and blue. So if you interpret by looking at a plant and saying, oh, I know what that is, well, I don't, and I've been doing it for 40 years. So you can see there's distinct differences in the appearance. It could be green, it could be blue, it could have short wavy leaves. So that's just one example of one plant and the variation that's obvious in the same picture. This, I'm not sure what this is. It's big, it's stout, it's kind of one of those Dracaenas, but I'm not sure which one. That's typical Dracaena draco. It looks like it's been eating spinach, like from the old Popeye cartoons. The muscular segments are just superb. And this, there aren't the segments that we saw in the previous image. It's quite like there's no segment sections. Is this the same species? To the right, to the far right, you might just be able to see that to the far right, that's Dracaena draco on the far right. So what's this one on the left? Oh, okay. Here's me standing next to a specimen about 25 years ago, and it's quite tall, and looking at it, you can obviously see solitary trunk. It's massive. It's thicker than a human body, and it got thicker and thicker and thicker and bigger, bulkier when it grew. What on earth is that? Well, here are 2 Dracaena, supposedly Dracaena dracos, but you notice the ones in the back have orange stems with segments. The one that's white and solitary, upright, that's different. Here, Dracaena draco, there's lots of examples of different trees here. This one's blue, this one's more green but taller, and in the far back there's a bluer one still. So that's some of the variation within if you were to plant a packet of seeds, they'll all come up looking more or less like these ones here. And these are quite old trees. But let's look to the left of this picture. And now you've got a walkway in, and there's Dracaena dracos. And these are specimens that are 3-4 meters high, 5 meters high, and there's a forest of them over here. But to the left, what on earth is this thing here, this big tall trunk? Well, it's as tall as the palms and with a solitary trunk. Is this the same species as this here? Why the difference? There's Michelle. Hello, Michelle. There's a path in there, and if you walk in, you'll just notice this trunk, and that trunk is bigger, broader than any Phoenix canariensis I've ever come across. It was a massive solitary trunk. So these are Dracaena dracos, but that trunk, that sort of massive specimen of what, you ask? There it is. Look at it, the tall one, as tall as the palms. My goodness. Now, back to this image, you notice the contrast between the orange-stemmed ones. Well, I would assume the seeds, when planted, came from the same source for the orange ones, but the two that are in the foreground with the whiter trunks, the solitary trunks, they probably came from a different plant. So the seed was collected from two distinct sources. So you can see that explains much of the variation you're looking at here. Sydney, you know this one fell. Look at the wavy stems. There's not the muscular segments we saw in the previous pictures. There's not the solitary stem. Again, another example of difference. And when I look at this again, I'm thinking, my goodness, there's at least 3 distinct variations of what we're all calling Dracaena draco. Here's one in California, and that's Randy Baldwin. He took me to a tree that he thought was really unique, and he had to show me. And looking up in the trunk, look at the wavy stem. The branches look wavy. They're not segmented like the ones you saw earlier. And if you look closely, that's really quite bizarre. What on earth is this? Well, again, this is typically called Dracaena draco. Oh my God. What on earth is that? Well, in this day and age, you're going to say it's AI. This is not AI. This is a photograph. It's real. The trunk, where the humans are standing, you can see the trunk is almost 2 meters across right at the base at the ground level, 2 meters in diameter. Well, this is giant. And there's Randy Baldwin again. He took me to another one. And again, these are just remarkably. I've been to visit and stand under and stand before some of the most bizarre specimens in the world. And I studied these, and I have been doing so for years and years, nearly 40 years. And I've been to every forest, every plantation where there's significant specimens, where samples and seed have been collected from across all the islands and put together side by side for comparison. It's important, but I still don't know what this one is. I can't quite, I still have things to learn myself. But here's something for you that's interesting. To the left here, this is Dracaena draco, and these 2 specimens over here, I don't know what they are, but they're not the same. And this one here got burnt. The sun one year was too hot and the trunk suffered in the sun. And you can see the scarring, of course. These ones, there's no indication whatsoever of scarring. I guess the white reflects the light. It's from a habitat in nature genetically where it can tolerate a lot higher levels of sun and heat and scorching. So that's an interesting feature for wanting to, so white, beautiful. Oh, God. Now, look at this whiteness here. Someone recently in a presentation a few weeks ago said, aren't they painted? That just looks so wrong. There's the Dracaena draco from before that I showed you. It was burnt on the other side. That's Dracaena draco. What are these things here? Wow. Just for a minute, I just want to reflect on the fact that there's so much variation within what we're calling Dracaena draco. I've tried to suggest that part of the reason is they're not all Dracaena draco. There's variation from the different islands. And there are so many examples that, I could talk about. I've just given you a summary of some of the features that are obvious that anybody could see and say, yep, you're right, Attila, they're definitely genetically different. It's not just growing conditions, they're different. Now, there's a lot of problems when people grow these plants. Now, let's look at cultivation and people who cultivate them and what problems they might face so you could perhaps learn something. This is held up because it's been moved, but obviously if it were to fall, it would kill people. It's so heavy, it's massive. There's one in our garden. Hello, Michelle. And it's got a little bit of a lean. It didn't begin its life with a lean. It started leaning in the last year or so. That lean, even though it's minor, suddenly it bothered me enough to say I've got to really take it seriously because I've seen, Sydney, you know, Judy, you mentioned the one that fell. There's a chap. Can you see that man in the background? He's walking, jogging. He's jogging along. Oh, it fell. I wonder if anyone's looked underneath to see if there's anybody buried under there. I'm not sure, but anyway, another botanical garden in Australia, and there's Michelle, and now I see a tap, hose, dripping water. I see a Dracaena draco leaning. Why? It's leaning more than it should. It perhaps was not leaning in the past, but it's definitely got a lean on it now towards the tap, the ground softer, wetter, perhaps. I'm not sure, but that troubled me. So I went and got the management and took them over and had a chat. And after half an hour, I said, look, you know, this plant needs some help. And Dracaena draco trees can benefit from draconian intervention, whatever that might mean. Let's have a look again. There's the plant, and it has since, after talking to management, this is one of their most prized specimens. They didn't want to do it, but they did. Chop, chop. See the branches on the right. If you look closely, you can see cut, 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 cut all over to try to correct the problem of it eventually falling over, like the one in Sydney. So that intervention will definitely give the chance for it to live longer, better, happier. So that intervention was necessary. Here's another one in a garden, botanic garden, and it's tied up with rope. Can you see the rope right here, tied here, and there's star pickets and everything? Do you see the stem with the bend in it? Well, that bend, the weight of the canopy as it grows and develops, the weight will always continue to push on that side. If it doesn't pull it out of the ground, that's going to break. Now, why not intervene now and cut it off and try and reroute the apex rather than keep tying it? Now, here's another one that had a problem once, and branches on the left-hand side either died or fell away or broke off, but that right-hand side is going to cause stress across that plant. And I've visited again and again every year, looking at its progress, and eventually I saw it being supported like this, and I thought, no, why not? It has since had some branches cut off, but it's concerned me that these sorts of examples indicate perhaps poor management in a sense that early intervention was not undertaken. Now, here in a botanic garden, this tree, when it fell, it was still alive. They called me and they asked me after 3 weeks of it laying on the ground. I went and had a look, and I was considering whether they should stand it up and try and save it. But I noticed that all this damage on this stem here was because this side that wasn't in the sun, that was always in shadow, was suddenly laying exposed, and the sun had damaged the tissue beneath the skin. And I thought, no, it's too late. You should have stood it up in the first day or two, or put some shade cloth over the trunk, because they didn't consider the fact that sunburn across the shady side would be problematic. Such an old specimen. It was such a beautiful plant. Now, back to ones I have in the garden. I have many in the garden, and this one's upright, this very same specimen. One year I went up to, so notice how perfectly erect it is here. The very same specimen. A year later, we had really wet winters and started to lean. I thought, oh, Michelle, we're going to have to do something. If we leave it like this, the weight distribution at the canopy will cause it to eventually, it's going to slide. The soil is soft. It's just giving way on that side, and it's starting to lean. No, I've got to do something. So I did. I thought, what do I do? Well, I dug a hole underneath on that side where it's leaning, pushed it back, and I shoved some rocks underneath. Yeah, see me smiling. Oh, it's perfectly erect again. Very happy. Yes, if you don't intervene, I had to cut a lot of roots. I had to do some drastic cut back there, but it survived. Now, oh, look at that. Hello, Michelle. Look at that narrow neck there. Oh, gosh, I wouldn't be growing this. I'm thinking that's asking for trouble. Now, when we grow Dracaena draco, I often ask the question, why do people want it? Why do people want to grow it? Well, it's famous, well, you know, historic, and it's got a legend and the dragon's blood and all that. Not that this one has the same blood, but why do people grow it? Well, it's not grown for its flowers, and it's not grown for its leaves. It's grown for the trunk. So the trunk and the appeal, the visual appeal of the trunk is so important. That's the primary reason people grow it. Well, I like the ones with the fattest trunk, with the trunks with the most beautiful features and visual coloration. So the dramatic trunks are the reason most people want to grow Dracaena draco. Now, it's interesting because I'm now looking at Canberra. It's sort of a different topic. We're in Canberra. There's a place called the Arboretum. It's full of trees. It's a new planting, relatively new, and it overlooks the city. And it's an arboretum where thousands of trees of all different species, many of them rare, being planted. They're going to make forests of rare and interesting trees for people to walk amongst and around. Visitor centre, restaurant, and facilities, and trees coming up and planted everywhere. Hills and hills and hills. There's the visitor centre, so you can see it's a really big operation. This whole setup. Well, the reason I'm talking about the Arboretum in Canberra is specifically behind the visitor centre. You notice those white things. Those white things are little greenhouses. In and under each of those greenhouses, Dracaena dracos, or were. They're all gone. Now they've been replaced by Xanthorrhoea. What went wrong? Why on earth were they all replaced? Well, the story is long and kind of challenging, and I'm not going to discuss it in too much detail, but it so happens just in the last few weeks, Jackie Warburton, a former president of the Cactus and Succulent Society of Canberra and an expert landscaper, gardener, grower of cacti and succulents, she was involved at the time with replenishing and revitalising a cactus and succulent garden because of her expert local knowledge. And it was wonderful. But, my Jackie Warburton's her name, and some of her pictures, she helped organise this. There's actually Succulent Day at the National Arboretum. And it's a free talk given. It's got their, I was the speaker. Goodness gracious. Anyway, find out more. Now, if you notice closely on the back of that sheet, it's got something and it says there, growing succulents, Attila in the afternoon, but there's also a short talk on dragon and bottle trees. You see, the Arboretum had an extensive plan to have a forest of dragon trees and a forest of bottle trees. Wow. This was the original planting, early days, and notice how they had to put something around the base or the trunks, perhaps, to protect from rodents, pests, or I don't know what protection, but that's the section they started out where some of the trees were planted. And they suffered a lot of problems along the way, frost, cold, wet, and they had to put stone and gravel, had to put these frames around it. And even there's net, you can see there's, if you look closely at your screen, you'll see net was put on this and eventually complete greenhouse covering. So, but look, you can already see one dead there again too on the left. See the left-hand side there? But slowly, one after the other, they started to die. Some were stolen and replaced. They continued to die. In the original planning, there was an incredibly beautiful plan. Far bottom, there's some other Dracaena dracos in their little special glass house, greenhouse protected areas. But in the master plan, there were all these great ideas. And one of the great ideas, specifically the National Arboretum Canberra Master Plan. This is on my phone and Google, you can see at the top. And going close to this text, it says there specifically, directly through a grid-like plantings, moving from the open sunny corridors into dense shaded rooms of the Dracaena draco forest. Scale and interaction sketches often used human figures to contrast the massive prehistoric scale of the dragon trees against the surrounding landscape, highlighting the tree zone concept where humans are secondary to the preservation of this rare species. Interesting, it says the grid framework, the drawings in the draft plan, emphasised a strict repetitive planting pattern that over decades would merge into a solid mass of blue-green foliage, creating a cathedral-like space underneath. Now, this is what they had kind of planned. This is AI, not me or their designers. I put this image together to give you an example of what they were hoping to achieve, but they had drawings that are somewhat similar with people walking under the canopy in a forest. So this was their dream. But unfortunately, with all the struggles over the years since they planted them, they slowly died and struggled, and the maintenance and the costs to maintain this was horrendous. So it was a real embarrassing and sad story. But someone in my last presentation told me, why don't you name and shame who was responsible for this big mistake? But at the end of the day, death, one, two, three, four, and some more, dying slowly. Eventually, the whole thing was removed. It was embarrassing. But anyway, I'm not here to name and shame anyone. I just want to talk about the plants. But this was an exercise, nonetheless, utilizing Dracaena draco. And not once was I consulted. You might think, well, who do you think you are, Attila? Why should you be consulted? These are photographs from the 70s and 1980s, and I've stitched them together. You can see I've pasted one photograph on another. And there's a field of Dracaena dracos, and I experienced frost. I collected seed of plants that were already frost hardened, but these plants still suffered because near Pakenham, I had a field of Dracaena dracos. And you'll notice in the valleyways, there's lots of brown. That's all mulch like hay and straw, because if the rosettes are looked at and examined closely, you'll actually see I put straw and hay and rubbish in the canopies. So every winter when the frosts, I had regular frosts, I would put, that's a traditional European method for dealing with extreme frost and cold through winter to help plants survive. I thought, well, I would have at least suggested that in Canberra. I never saw them utilise this technique. And also, too, the black Marix was good for absorbing heat. Oh, and these are raised beds. Oh, looks like I do have a small understanding of growing Dracaena dracos that could have benefited. I was once, years ago, involved in nursery, wholesale, retail. That's not me, it's a nursery manager, but pardon me. This is in the nursery itself. This is again a photograph. You can see I photographed the edge of the photograph that you can see there. There are Dracaena dracos. We were selling, I was organising the sale of hundreds per year in pots, as well as landscape. Hello, Michelle. These are forested Dracaena dracos where I was growing hundreds. And every year they were being sold, but you saw the small ones. They eventually got bigger, so they survived years and years of frost, wet feet and everything. But the experimentation and commercial needs I had were my failures diminished each year and the successes increased each year. Hello, Michelle. So putting that to one side, this is 2026. I now am semi-retired, but I still have many Dracaena dracos, small to large, and exceptionally thick-trunked specimens, and I would often regularly dig. So dig and transport and sell to people. And in this particular case, it indicates, dug out of our gateway there, trying to shove them into cars. It was very challenging without breaking the apex, the delicate apex. But there are lots of plants in our garden that we often have to dig and transport, and the trunk was so critical to protect from being scratched or bruised, because it's not the leaves, it's not the roots, they don't matter at all. Well, they can all be replaced, but the trunk, that's so important. Oh, and I'm often putting them in trailers and transporting them, even driving them up to Sydney myself. So this is one that made it to Sydney, but one of the tips broke out. Gosh, I'm again digging other ones, trucking them, filling trucks full of Dracaena dracos. So my experience with Dracaena dracos goes back decades. And yet, it's funny with, there's one there. Hello, Michelle. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. The garden is full. And I've actually sold thousands over the years, from small ones in pots to big ones to landscapers. And what's really good is most of the ones I grow have really superb trunks like this with character and visual features. So, I don't consider myself an expert on Dracaena dracos, but I would say I'm more knowledgeable on growing them in cold climates, perhaps even the climate of Canberra, than anyone in Australia. And I was one of the earliest commercial growers wholesaling, hundreds per year. So now, I'm not changing the subject, but for a bit of a distraction, because it's important. Michelle and I love roses. You think I only like succulents, I only grow succulents. Well, this is in our house, in our porch, and that's a real colour. It's not AI. And it's Dracaena draco. Oh, and draco there, but also roses. Now, it so happens I also appreciate roses. But I wonder, why do people grow roses? Well, this is a species. This is a wild rose. This is a rose. that if you wanted to buy a rose, just go out and buy a rose. No, no, people don't go out and buy just a rose. People want to grow something special. They want to grow something with bigger flowers. They want to grow something with a specific color. They want to grow something that produces lots of flowers. Oh, like, oh gosh, that's stunning. Well, it's hard to believe that real flowers could rival anything AI could produce. Well, this is because we no longer just grow roses, we grow special roses that have been improved and so forth. We don't like growing mongrels. Well, you know something? I don't like growing mongrel Dracaena dracos. I will never buy Dracaena draca seed when I don't know the background story or if I haven't seen the actual parent the seed came from, because I might be waste my time growing mongrels. Now, the term is neutral in scientific breeding terms, but in casual use, it's interesting. It's low quality. It means low quality. A mongrel means low quality. It's funny because I now just want to mention the word dog. I know everyone knows what the word dog means, but if you want to have a pet dog, you don't go out and buy the species. You don't want just a dog. You want a special kind of dog. You're going to select the color, the size it'll grow. You want to select the cultivar, the hybrid, the particular uh, trait that you're looking for, the special quality. If you're going to get a puppy and you're going to spend 5, 10 years looking after, or 15 years with a dog, you want something that's going to reward you with exactly what you want. Why waste your time buying a mongrel? But you know the word dog. Let's have a look at the species. This is the name of Canis lupus, the dog. That's what your dog is. But you know, that's also the name of a wolf. See, the dog is related to, I'm sorry? Uh, the dog, it was domesticated from the wolf 14,000 years ago. But the thing is, the reason I'm trying to put some emphasis on the fact that we randomly look at things like Dracaena draco and we sort of like think, oh, I've got a Dracaena draco, I've got a dragon's tree, a dragon's blood tree. It's so naive, it's so shallow, when really the complexity and the importance of understanding the plant and preparing and planning what you buy and grow, because you're going to waste 5, 10, 15 years. Now, there are some aloes here. The most sought after species aloes that exist happen to be the species Alloplantii or Aloedendron plantii and Dichotoma. Now, they struggle in gardens everywhere. They struggle so often for so many people, for so many reasons. But there's a simple explanation. There's Aloe barbari or Aloedendron barbari. That's in our garden, and it's a bit gappy. I like it. I grow a few of them, but it's a bit gappy. It's not exactly, oh, and the flowers aren't great, but it's always a bit gappy. I find it looks like it's hungry, thirsty. These ones in Adelaide too, they always look a bit gappy and weak. They look like they need some Nutricote or food or something. They need some. Now, this is Alloplantii. That's a species. It was planted right about here at this height. It was planted. And in about 10 years, it's only grown 30, 40 centimetres. This thing was planted only a few short years ago as a seedling, from tissue culture. This thing here happens to be a hybrid. So instead of growing the species, there's the species in the back. This thing is only a fraction of the age. And look how robust and sturdy and bulky and heavy. Wow. There are two names that this plant's going by, Hercules or Goliath. And their cultivars bred, one of them was bred by tissue culture expert by the name of Kelly Griffin. You ever heard of Kelly Griffin? Now, he planted one of those hybrids in his garden. There it is here. Superior hybrid. Instead of getting a species, he develops and breeds and creates hybrids with superior attributes, just like the rose. Who wants a wild rose? Who wants a wild dog? Well, Kelly is into who wants a wild plant. Well, this plant planted 10 years later, how's it look? That's not AI. There's his house. This thing was massive. It's fast, it's easy to grow, it's bulky, and you can obviously see it's a little bit like Aloedendron barbari or Aloe barbari, or Bainzii, but it's just amazing how this is just so much bigger, bulkier, better, faster. Here's Kelly in one of his greenhouses in which he does breeding and research. He has several of these igloos filled like this, and they're all experimental. he does so much work. He works for a company called Altman's Nursery. It's one of the largest nurseries in the world. It's huge. It's the biggest in America for its production of mostly cacti and succulents. And this is just a sampling one of about 80 greenhouses. It's just amazing. A sample of what Kelly does. These are all Agavebracteosa. They're all basically same genetic parentage of being one species, but these are all different examples, variegated inside, variegated outside. But of all of these, after put through extensive trials, Kelly knows exactly what he found out. The white here melt in frost and hail damages and the sun burns the white. But this one, it had more chlorophyll inside the white segments. And so this one survived the sun, the frost, the hail. This one went into commercial production. All the rest of these are put in the bin. This is superior. These were all regarded and tested as inferior. Now, just an example, 3 agaves. This one's nice, but bad pattern. This one, too many offsets, pushed the main plant out of the pot. This one, oh, that's nice contrast. Kelly's always doing work, choosing, selecting. This one, bad scar. This one, it's got smudge marks all over it. It looks blotchy. So selecting and breeding. Kelly might plant thousands of these little ones, and they're often put in the bin. Scars and disease. But which one would you choose if you could pick one to grow on? Oh, there it is. Yes, striking. Oh, yes, Kelly, you're on a winner there. Don't waste your time growing Agave titanota from seed. You'll be wasting your money and your time. Most of them will come up with regressive genes and show poor quality. You have to choose and have ones which have superior attributes. Kelly is an expert on breeding with these, and he works with thousands and thousands of plants, and he's pointing at ones which have value. And this one, he's saying, oh, that's too green. It's got too long a spine. It damages the public. And this one's got not enough leaf. He said, why grow that when you can grow that? He's right. There's Kelly in the background talking to another expert from Madagascar. And he's walking around one of his trial gardens where he puts these plants to the test. And my God, Kelly has been doing this as a lifelong obsession, and he's really onto something. This is the frontier where bigger, better, bolder, more beautiful plants than ever imagined, smaller, more compact, and rarer species. The reason I mention this is Kelly develops and improves upon the wild species to create cultivars, just like the rose, just like the dog. And all of these are superior clones that far surpass anything you could find in nature. Oh, God. These are just, so beautiful. Now, Kelly and the nursery Altmans, they do trials when pots like this are put out in the public and tested with people, and in particular families where they're looking for things that are small and compact, will flower in a pot, will grow on my porch, will grow indoors. Versatility is a very important part, an integral part of the whole plan. So Kelly and the nursery, they're doing research with the public. They actually do know what the future holds for cacti and succulents. Now, I reflect again upon when I mentioned the rose and the dog. I have no malice towards people who like growing the pure species or the wild form. But let's have a look at the word malice in a bit more detail, because malice also is the name of the apple, and it's been domesticated. I have to tell you, I have been domesticated too. These, you call them apples. These are not wild. These are all superior hybrids or cultivars. The real apple that exists in nature is a real mongrel. You'll notice here, it says here, apples was the real wild apples originated in the mountains of Central Asia. And these apples were smaller and more tart. Smaller, we're talking 2 to 3 centimeters in diameter. Apples were that small, and they were tart. They were so tart, they were unpalatable. People today would not eat them. No way would you eat them. But why would you want to eat the species when really these new domesticated, I don't want to grow a mongrel. I want to grow something that's really sweet and tasty. So I'm just trying to emphasize something. The term, again, it's very important that you understand it carries a slightly negative connotation for the word mongrel. It's of lower quality, and that's true. And when you're growing Dracaena draco, it's very, very important that you understand selecting the best quality right from the get-go. is so important. If you're going to wait 5, 10 years to grow a superb specimen, you'd be so, so disappointed if it didn't come up looking with the best trunk, the best features, and being the most hardy it can be for your gardening conditions. So whether I mention agave shoyi, Dracaena draco, aloe hercules, an agave bracteosa, or agave titanota, these are all basically representatives where, like the rose, the dog, or the apple, I believe with succulent appreciation, utilization, we're at the beginning of a new dawn. And I see the future as very rosy. See, why on earth would you, in this image, I don't know if you can see, but there are two mongrels here. These two here, they're going to be put into the bin. They're not going to be sold off or given away. They're going to be put in the bin. But these two are going to one day serve the general public and gardeners just like the apple does or the rose does. These are what are considered to be superior cultivars. They're far improved upon the wild species. Dracaena draco has a long way to go, but you can obviously see there's some opportunity there that's not being fully utilized with Dracaena draco, the dragon's tree, or the, as you might want to call it, the dragon's blood. But anyway, oh, no, I'm not going to go on any further. Let's just hold off there and see if we've got any questions, because I'll get carried away. I get quite excited, as you can tell, but there you are. Now,
Well, thank you. Has anybody got a question? I guess I've got one in that you mentioned the hybrid that Kelly had developed, the one that's called Goliath or Hercules. Did he actually cross it with a different aloe, or is it selection of that species?
there are two aloes crossed. It's a hybrid between two
true
aloes.
hybrid. Yeah, yeah.
It's an aloe barbari hybrid. So aloe barbari or aloedendron barbari or baintii, however you want to call it, because its name has changed. It's had an upgrade in its name. Basically, it's a superior hybrid of that species,
Right.
primarily showing its parentage.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yes, I have three actually, if that's not being greedy.
That's all right, Helen.
Is it true that I was looking at your photos? Do they never shoot from a cut trunk?
Dracaena draco.
Yeah.
If you contact me privately, I can show you images where certain trees, if there's humidity in the air, specifically like Sydney, where if there's enough humidity in the air, they will actually grow aerial roots from the trunk up way above the ground, at 1, 2 meters above the ground. And you can actually cut those branches off and they will root and grow in the ground.
Right, yeah, because in one of them you mentioned, you could take the cut top and replant it.
You can.
Yeah, but
It's not easy to do.
Those shots of pruned trees where they pruned away the branches to rebalance the tree, they don't reshoot really.
From the cut
That's a
mark.
general case.
Oh, okay. They generally, if you cut, I know what you're saying. Generally, a cut stem will remain as a stub.
Yeah, which is totally different to things like, yuccas and so on that can look similar.
Yeah, if you cut within the leaf segment, so if you had a canopy of Dracaena draco, if you had a canopy and you cut out the eye or the heart, the growing point, it will force branches to develop from near the apex, the remaining apex. But if you cut from below the leaves in the lower trunk, it will not regrow new heads.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting characteristic, I thought.
It is.
And the branching do they branch after they flower?
Not necessarily. That's primarily what does occur, yes. So generally speaking, after flowering, the central growing apex terminates. It's a terminal apex, and then branches will grow from there, 3 to 4, sometimes even more. Like I've had up to 7 instantly from the apical area. Sorry, from the side near the apex. The apex is actually dead. So after flowering,
that is what causes the very characteristic branch structure.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's 2 of them. My third one, if you don't mind. What causes that narrowing and then bulbous shape with the.
I would say poor growing conditions. When you, let's say, you're buying a plant on eBay out of someone's garden, or you visit someone's garden, you want to buy their specimen. If it looks wonky, and you think you're going to repair it, you won't be able to repair it. Let me tell you, the scars and the damage and the narrowing of a neck from poor growing conditions will be fairly permanent.
But you showed us a picture of one and you said, oh, look, isn't it beautiful the way there was this tapering and shapes on the stem? And is that just reflecting high rainfall years versus drought years?
Yes, it could be that. And some people who put a beautiful specimen into a pot and the growth suddenly gets smaller and smaller and smaller because it's not being fed and the pot's too small. The apex and all the growing point starts to decrease in size. And then when you take it out of the little pot and you put it into the ground, into fertile, deeper soil and better conditions, the head starts to swell again. The narrow neck remains narrow more or less permanently. I mean, it can expand a little bit, but generally that's a problem. I would have to cut that.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Any other interesting questions? You mentioned feeding there, Attila. What sort of regime for feeding the dragon?
Well, on one hand, there's the idea that from my presentation, I come across like I'm an expert. I'm still learning. I know so much, and yet after Kelly's experience taking me to agave shoyi habitat, I've come to realize the more I know, the more I realize how little I do actually know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, I tried to project to you that I have experience. I've proven that by showing you photographs that predate the digital era, and I've put the photographs, pasted them together, and showed them to convey my expertise, because there are a lot of people who might suggest that they're experts in the field of horticulture or landscape design or whatever, and or arborists, in fact. But regarding Dracaena draco, I wish to convey that I know more than most people in Australia. But that, to answer your specific question, there is still so much I don't know. Where I am in Melbourne, in my conditions growing them, because I experience a lot of frost and cold, hail and quite difficult winters. I'm east of Melbourne in an area that's semi-rural. I actually have very poor soil, very, very poor soil, lots of clay, lots of poor drainage issues. So I have to put the Dracaena dracos onto elevated sites. And so I use a lot of scoria in the subsoil. I've had to provide conditions that are better than just in the ground. So putting a Dracaena in the ground requires considerable consideration depending on where you are. And when you say, what do you feed them? I mean, I've used everything from dynamic lifter. I use dynamic lifter frequently for most of the garden. I also use slow release fertilizer, Nutrigrain and Osmocote. I mix a combination of 12-month Nutricote with a 3-month Osmocote. I mix it and then spray it like feeding the chickens. Once a year, I do that. Once a year. So, I do like to feed them. Oh, look, I don't want the Dracaenas to just sit there. I don't wait for them to grow. I'm a nurseryman. I make them grow as fast as you possibly can. That's my aim. I want them big, fast, and they become more appreciated by me and anyone who sees them. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, no, that's fantastic. And the thing I took from your bit at the beginning was that we all should stop calling them dragon's blood tree. If we're
correct,
Draco, we have to call them dragon trees.
Do you know, even books, most of the literature that I read, printed literature over the last 30 years, shows an incredible amount of, how would I say, short-sightedness, where, do you know, if I could have a conversation, it would be about this. We have an understanding that succulents are easy. So easy, you can take a cutting, you can just snap a piece off, break a piece, throw it on the ground, and it'll literally grow anywhere, on your rooftop, on a tin roof, on sand, on gravel, in your garden. Succulents are easy. Some are, but they're so easy. There's a generalized rule that succulents are easier to grow and manage than most plants. And so even when you're talking about Dracaena draco, oh, look, I've grown one successfully, so I know everything about them. Do you see that? There's a generalization that we oversimplify. And when you're talking about dragon's blood tree or Dracaena draco, or how there are different islands and each island has a different form of it, some are more suitable to cold climates. And even on the islands themselves, for example, look, if I've got Dracaenas growing in Melbourne and you collect seed off a tree that's growing in Melbourne successfully, then you're likely to have higher frost tolerance than if you collect seed off a tree in Adelaide or in Sydney or in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Because if you plant 100 seeds and some of them die or the frost kills some, the ones that have survived could have a genetic benefit. Now, so I'm saying in literature, I find it's far too simplistic to read a paragraph about Dracaena draco and then just close the book or close the laptop and say, oh, I can do this, plant a tree and it grows for you and you think you're an expert. Well, I'm just one of many experts, aren't I?
Jennifer, I think that could be the quiz question for Friday Blast.
Yeah, what is the name?
What's the correct common name?
Yes. Yes,
Attila,
it's
can I ask a question then? I mean, I'm sure it was years ago that I think it was Peter Valder talking about the dragon's blood and how it's caused by a fungus that colours the sap. Does that?
Dracaena cinnabari
Yeah.
is extremely well known through history. And if you look up with AI, you'll find that it was used for tens of thousands of years and for a whole range of things, medicinal as well as I just can't begin to tell. The list of things is extensive. Look that one up. That's not for me to cover, but I can tell you it's a natural sap that runs from the tree and it's blood red. And it's not exuded from Dracaena draco where Dracaena draco has is more of an orange, if anything, or the sap's a little bit of an opaque color, but not very clear. But Dracaena cinnabari is distinctly the one with the red blood. And it's got an incredible history. You should look that one up, but that's not my area of expertise. Again, I'm out of my boundary there.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Attila, could you just tell us a little bit about the flowering of Dracaena draco? Do they flower reliably? What are the triggers to flowering?
The reason I didn't really cover that is because no one has ever, for all the Dracaena dracos I've ever sold, even when the public want to buy just a plant for their garden that's a feature plant, a specimen in a pot, I tell them, oh, this will make incredible, good structure and beautiful form and nice canopy and everything. No one's ever asked me, what color flowers does it have? It's like, is it really so irrelevant? And if I try and tell them, they still seem to glaze over like they're not interested. The flowers aren't visually stunning or striking. They're cream colored and basically, they could flower from they begin to flower for some specimens in highlight areas. They'll begin to flower at about 1 meter in height. At 2 meters in height, they should all have flowered. And usually, as I've already discussed, they usually won't branch or divide until they're having flowered at least once. And if you do have one that ever branches under 1.5 meters in height, you've got a problem. If they start to branch too early, you'll never get to be able to appreciate the trunk because it'll branch and develop sideways. And so you'll never get that trunk where you can walk under. So if that happens, I've seen that happen. I tell people you've got these 4 new shoots or 5 new shoots, take 3 of them or all of them off except for one. Leave one to replace the terminated apex where the flower was, and that single one will mostly grow erect and give you that extra height that you might require. So it's at 1.5 meters or 2 meters, and then you can let it flower and branch out above you so you can look up into the canopy. If I can't look up into the trunk and the understory of the canopy, I haven't got the visual features I really bought it for or grown it for.
So what season do they flower in? And once they start flowering, do they flower every year?
Um, okay, they flower irregularly, and you can have a plant where one side, the sunnier side, like might have 10, 15 heads on the plant. You might find one side has 3 or 4 rosettes or canopies where the flowers, the inflorescence is a big bunch of little cream flowers. The flowers are only about a centimetre in diameter. They're not visually a highlight, but from any distance, it's appealing. It's not displeasing. What is more appealing is afterwards when it's covered in the fruit, whether it's got cross-pollination with another plant or not, you'll get these beautiful orange fruit developed and birds, native birds, currawongs love them. It's a real treat to see all the, types of birds, but in particular the currawongs. They love them.
I don't think I've ever seen a fruit.
Oh, orange and about 1 to 1.3 centimeters in diameter, round ball, looks like a marble.
Interesting.
But they don't flower every year, even for me. They're irregular, but every year I have a few plants that have flowers. But yeah, if I have mild summer, I'm likely to have the lowest count of flowering. If it's an extremely hot summer, so they love heat, they love the sun. Oh, the Canberra garden, I don't want to name and shame or anything, but it's funny. In habitat, dracaenas, these types of dracaenas grow on the mountain crests and the mountain apexes, hill apexes. They don't grow on the shady side of a hill like where they were planted in Canberra. Isn't that funny? I was going to focus on the shadows from the buildings and point out which way and which direction the sun comes from to indicate where perhaps they're would have been better positioned in their landscape design. But no, leave that one. I don't want to touch on that. I just like talking about plants. So, the errors done are past and that's irrelevant. But, looking forward and going forward, I don't know why, but 90% of the professionals in the country have never contacted me ever about Dracaena draco. And you just, because why would you need to get more advice about a plant that seems so simple and straightforward? What possible expert advice could I impart? Who am I?
They're justifying their existence.
Well, everyone's an expert. And like I said with the agave I realize I'm not an expert on Dracaena draco. Rather, I wish to suggest I'm more of an expert in Australia than anyone else in the country on the topic. That's all.
That's so true.
Actually, can I have another question? Sorry. Just about the root systems. You know how the sort of rule of thumb is that for a tree, and I realise that these are a succulent, but the root system would go out as far as the canopy.
And mostly radiate.
That's not necessarily the case, is it? And I noticed on the ones you've transplanted, the roots are really there's not a lot of root system on it. But then you wonder how are they stable enough with a small root system to support that very broad canopy of a mature tree?
The roots 99% of the roots radiate horizontally within the top 15 centimeters of soil. So in my conditions in particular, I've got clay at 30 centimeters and below, and Dracaena dracos hate the clay level. And in the soil, when I plant them, the roots go down about 15 centimeters and at the deepest, but the majority are only 5 centimeters or near the surface, and they radiate widely. And they're very sturdy, but it's like a network of, when you say for support, it's like, how would I say, like a giant frame network. So as far as the canopy of the Dracaena exists, so if it's a 2 meter wide canopy, there may be roots that extend 2 meters in all directions, a meter and a half in all directions around the tree base. And I cut them within 20 centimeters of the trunk. To transport them, I cut them short. I'll need securing and tying to stabilize them upright, keep them upright for the first 12 months or so. And then the roots should establish and extend to at least twice the distance they were. So But yeah, look, they basically radiate like a network, and they hang on like they're very good at grasping the ground. So I have to say, it has to be really, really wet for the plants to slowly slip down a hillside or lean or fall over.
Oh, that's great. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, wow. A whole hour has gone by.
Yes,
and,
we're
so
at the end, I
quickly,
think.
so fascinating.
Yeah.
And yeah, Attila,
It
every
was
time I
fascinating.
hear you-
Can I just say, oh,
Yep,
can I just apologize for yawning? I'd arrived from Singapore this morning at 5 a.m. So I'm about to fall asleep. But it was really, it kept me awake. Yeah.
Good.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you,
Well
mate. That's a
done.
win for me. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
that
really
is. That's wonderful. No, we all enjoyed it so much. We learnt so much, and we just love the fact that you take some of those concepts and explain them so well. So the whole idea of the mongrel and the dog and the apples, etc., will be in our minds forever whenever we look at a hybrid plant. So thank you so much, Attila. We hope that you will grace us with your wisdom, knowledge, and pleasant nature again, and maybe everyone can just give the man a bit of an applause.
Definitely.
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you very, very, very much. So we are very fortunate to have you among our number.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Well, look,
thank
it's funny. It's a great pleasure. I love talking plants. Well, as you know, of course. But thank you. And thank you, Judy, for the introduction. And thank you, George and Jennifer and everyone for coming along, and Helen for your questions. So enjoy the rest of your day. I'm off.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Your
Thanks,
knowledge is
Attila.
awesome.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing it.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.